The following is a special series of the Darden Ideas to Action podcast, focusing on the power of disruptive innovations.
Hi, I'm Yael.
Hello, I'm Mike. And
welcome to Good Disruption.
All right, Yael, I'm so excited that we're doing this podcast together. Tell us a little bit about what this podcast is about.
Well, this podcast is basically you and I talking, like we often do, about new cool technologies, innovations around us that are disrupting their industries.
And what is disruption?
Ooh, you tell me. You're the strategy professor. But maybe, Mike, we should back up and introduce ourselves first to the audience.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I am Michael Lenox. I'm a faculty member here, been at Darden since 2008, teach primarily strategy, but have a lot of interests around innovation and new technologies. I teach a course on the digital age and all the changes that we're seeing in business and technology, and just very interested in how markets are disrupted by these new technologies and these new business models, if you will, that are arising.
Thanks, Mike. And my name is Yael Grushka-Cockayne. I'm proud to say that I've been a professor here at Darden and your colleague since 2009. So I joined a little bit after you. I remember actually meeting you when I was here in one of my visits before I joined. My area of expertise is project management, new product development, decision analysis, which is the formal course that I teach in the core here at Darden. And I've been doing a lot in the data science space as well. Way back when I studied for my undergrad, I got an engineering degree. I think actually you and I share a lot in common.
Yeah, I think that's our interest in technology
yes,
goes way
back. And the industrial engineering degree that I got when I was still living in Israel introduced me to a lot of new cool ideas. It was the first place I learned how to program, and I loved it. Really taught me a lot about the online space and how to think about new systems and new innovations. And since then, I've been really drawn to the tech space in general and innovations as well.
That is true. We have very similar backgrounds because I did systems engineering, which is basically industrial engineering. Yep. And I always point out this was, it's been 30 years now, so it's a long time ago. But we were learning things like neural networks and artificial intelligence.
Lisp, did you code in Lisp?
I never coded in Lisp, but look, my first job out, I was working with federal government clients and having to do COBOL. I mean, that's how old. And Fortran, and I think I learned Pascal and eventually learned C. So I'm old.
I'm with you. I think we're about the same. But it's been fun, and it's been a luxury of our job, or I feel this way, and I know that you do too, to really, due to our interactions with students, due to the work that we do with companies and consulting opportunities, and just due to our research, it constantly pushes us to learn, to stay current, to be inspired by the world around us, and to try and assess where is the new innovation going to come from? Where is the disruption happening?
Now the title of our podcast is Good Disruption. So tell me more about the good, or maybe what's the bad?
Oh, yeah. Well, maybe I'll come back to the good, bad, and no disruption. If you tell us first, what is a disruption? Because you have all the textbook definitions.
Yeah, it's a term of art that's been popularized to really describe what I think is a hallmark of our market-based economies, which is periodically new things come about and often replace the old. And so we can think of so many examples in the modern world where your Kodak, film and Kodak camera is replaced by your smartphone from Apple, or Blockbuster Video. Remember them? Yeah. You rent your videos. Now everything's moved to streaming. We're going to talk about electric vehicles and what they're doing to the auto industry. These aren't new things. These are phenomena that go back, centuries here, where we see the new replacing the old. So disruption, can be both disruptive for those existing players, but can also be very positive and lead to new technologies, new ways of living.
So the incumbents don't necessarily have to disappear. They just need to reinvent themselves if they stay around. Right?
That's exactly right. And I think that's one of the things we're going to try to hit upon is, what is this going to mean for the organizations that are existing in the market when they face these disruptions? What does it mean for new entrepreneurial entrants who will be coming in many cases, serving as a disruptor here?
Great. So let's go back to the question question around, you gave us a great definition of what disruption is. Let's talk about good and bad, how they can translate into good and bad. And I'll have a stab at it, and then we'll see what you think about it. So for me, a good disruption is that ultimately there is more value than less, meaning after the disruption, the new business model, the new product, the new way of conducting oneself in that space is better for society at large. So that's better for the companies who are obviously they're successful, they're making revenue, or they're earning money, and better to the individual people who are using the service or using the product. They're better off in whatever it is that they're doing. So with electric vehicles, it's a classic example. Maybe we need to think about, is there more good than bad? Are people going to benefit? Is our planet going to benefit? Are the companies going to benefit?
Totally agree. And, to use the economist term, does it increase welfare, right? Ultimately here. Yep. But to have that societal perspective, disruption, by its very name, might be bad for some individuals and some organizations, and we have to understand that. But in its totality, is it going to be good for society? And I think that's what we're really interested in with thinking about these technologies.
And when we say no disruption, what do we mean by that? No disruption, we mean that there's a shock, there's an idea, it could be revolutionary, but then there's no appetite for people to adopt it?
Perhaps. And I think, history is littered with things that were going to become disruptive that never quite materialized. And so trying to do the best job we can in trying to forecast whether we think this is truly going to become this disruptive technology or in fact, whether it's not. I mean, we're not all driving our, I'm forgetting the name of the Back to the Future vehicle. Our DeLoreans.
Right? At 88 miles per hour.
Right. So there are all these examples of technologies that never quite took off and made it, and do our best job to try to forecast whether that's the case or not. What in your mind?
Hoverboards might stay, right? Might be here.
Maybe. What about bad disruptions? Right. What makes something truly bad?
Yeah, it's a good question. And as we were talking, I was wondering if bad disruptions really stay, right? Like maybe bad disruptions are temporary, and then we self-correct, right? And we go back to the old technology, and it becomes a no disruption, right? Over a period of time, which maybe that's wishful thinking, right?
That's an interesting perspective. I do a lot, as you know, on environmental issues, and I get this question a lot, that whenever we think of the new technology that's going to solve our current problem, it tends to create a new problem for us. And I think that's, again, just something we have to understand and embrace. And
so maybe it's time dependent. So going back, to the Industrial Revolution, there were a lot of disruptions during that time that today we would probably think of as bad disruptions because ultimately they've harmed the world around them.
Well, look, we'll probably maybe take an opportunity to talk about things like social media. But right now and in current society, there's probably a lot of people who would say bad disruption. You go back no less than a decade, and remember like the Arab Spring, and people were talking about Facebook as this democratizing technology that was going to empower the world to fight autocracies and dictatorships. And man, that narrative has gone away in our current environment.
And it definitely comes and goes in waves, and whatever's happening in the world definitely affects our judgment of a certain disruption. So during the pandemic, I think Zoom and online learning was a godsend to many individuals, and yet when folks stand back, they may not all think about online learning as a good disruption. So it really depends on the time. Online streaming, is that good for cinema? Is that it disrupt the video stores for sure, but what has it done to cinema at large and the arts? Arguably, there's never been a time in Hollywood's legacy where it had more content, more creativity, and more consumers out there than they do today.
Martin Scorsese might disagree.
He's
not really into that streaming future. Well, look, these are all topics that I think we're going to try to tackle as we go through this podcast. We're so excited to be doing this, and to our many hopefully listeners out there, make recommendations to us. What do you think is an interesting new either technology or disruption that's taking place, and perhaps we'll tackle it on one of our future podcasts.
Beautiful. I'll say while we're chatting before we get edited off, why do you think that it's so important for us to have this podcast out there in the world?
I think, conversations around, again, technology and some of the shifts that are occurring can get so wrapped up into either doom and gloom or the opposite, overhype and overexcitement. And hopefully we can bring a level-headed perspective to some of these that you see out there. At least that's my hope. Yeah,
and so I love that. So one of the things that we're going to be doing in this podcast is bringing in some guests periodically and experts in their field to give us their opinion, to share with us their knowledge of their disruption and why they're passionate passionate about it, and we'll still reserve the judgment on whether it is a good or a bad or a no disruption. But hopefully that will bring in some other perspectives that folks will like to hear.
We will definitely need to bring some expertise beyond our own into these podcasts here as we go through various technologies. So looking forward to that as well.
Wonderful. Well, join us, subscribe now, and we are excited for this journey ahead.
Darden.